Throughout the Half-Life 2 episodes, but especially in Episode 2, it's shown that Dr. Mossman from the main game has made a major discovery in her own adventure away from Gordon Freeman and his adventure.
It's the Borealis!
Good God.
Incredible!
What? The Borealis? It's real?
Oh yes, quite real, despite its almost legendary stature.
The Borealis isn't a stranger to Half-Life, as it was supposed to be in base Half-Life 2 itself. It was even part of several press demos of the game before its release. This demo is from the year 2000. And this one is from 2002. Episode 2, however, ended in a cliffhanger before more of this new Mossman-led Borealis mystery could be revealed. After Episode 2's end in 2007, Valve would make roughly 6 other attempts to return to the Half-Life brand. The 6th would become Half-Life Alyx, but we do know of others. This video will discuss Valve's own publicly released information surrounding a couple of them. This information comes from Valve's own Half-Life 2 20th Anniversary documentary and the final hours of Half-Life Alyx. One of these projects we know about is what was internally dubbed Half-Life 3. It was developed over a year between 2013 and 2014 in Source 2. The main gameplay concept was to use proceduralism to generate skirmishes between more handcrafted beats. The example David Spayer used was that the game would pick a building in a level that would be boarded up and had only one route in. A prisoner or hostage would be placed inside and enemies would populate the interior. The player's goal was to get in, with each version of this prisoner gameplay type being different. We seem to know of one character who would have appeared in Half-Life 3. Within Half-Life Alyx are files for a character named Tanaka, under the HL3 file name. A complete eye texture, as well as its reference file, an animation graph used to control animations, and a .xml document all exist for them. They had one known animation and one known pose set up in some form. The second project we know about was named Borealis, and was spearheaded by Mark Laidlaw sometime just before he left Valve in 2015. It would have been set in VR, like Half-Life Alyx, and would have been set in the bridge of the Borealis, as the ship bounced forward and backward in time between the 7-Hour War and sometime just after Episode 2. A planned minigame would have involved fishing off the bow of the Borealis. It's possible that Alien Swarm was one of these projects, as it was slated to be a Half-Life game initially. Following the release of Half-Life 2, Valve began to think of new ideas for how to release new content in smaller packages, but in quicker frequency. Their idea was that one group of employees would start work on Episode 1, while a team would work on Episode 2, and another on Episode 3, and finally Arcane Studios being outsourced for a Ravenholm expansion.
Yeah, man, part of the fallout of Half-Life 2 shipping was the realization that we can't do 6-year-long bet the whole company bets over and over again, and if we get it wrong one time, we're a big crater in the ground, as Gabe would say. And so we started to think about episodic releases.
The first idea when they pitched it to us, like, we're going to do this episode of content, we'll do one every how much? 12 months?
Yeah, we were going to have like alternating teams coming out every year and a half, something like that.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, this is neat. But then, yeah, it just got out of hand.
Episode 3 was for much of this time just a collection of concept art, gameplay testing, and story beat ideas.
It was still a collection of like playable levels in no particular order, and a collection of story beats and story concepts.
The gameplay end of things would see various tests ongoing. The chopper fight at Station 21 in Episode 2 originally came from this testing work.
Originally, the Episode 2 chopper battle was a classic fight that relied on the use of the RPG. In the meantime, we were experimenting with a completely new way of fighting the chopper, which we had hoped to have ready for Episode 3. The early Episode 3 experiments were so successful that we pulled them straight into Episode 2.
Several new weapons were prototyped for Episode 3. One of them we don't know much about, but it had its own custom model. This unique weapon was used as a placeholder model for a paint gun that was experimented with during Portal 2's development. You can see footage of it here in action during a lecture by Valve at CS50 in 2018. I thank the Combine Overwiki for finding this connection. Another one was referred to as the Ice Gun.
Well, I worked on Episode 3, and I was working on this gun called the Ice Gun that basically let you create amorphous shapes out of ice. So you could like raise a little ice wall in front of yourself. It would be attached to the floor, and then the Combine soldiers could shoot holes in it, and it would shatter and break, like kind of like glass, I guess. So that was the primary mode of you could build ledges for yourself to get down, you know, cliff faces. It had another mode that was like a kind of like a Silver Surfer mode where you would extrude the ice in front of yourself and then run along it and use it to cross gaps, go over chasms and things like that. What else do we have? It was set in the Arctic because it was centered around Borealis.
I remember the little blobby, squishy.
Oh yeah, Brian was working.
There's also this sonar gun, added to the Source 2013 SDK when Team Fortress 2 was added to it. The sonar gun had the ability to consume physics objects, penetrate walls, and would ping nearby enemies to the player. A newer, higher poly version of Alyx's gun was modeled for Episode 3. While this model didn't end up in retail Half-Life Alyx, it would get reused as a test weapon, being seen here in a 2017 internal VR demo to test the Strider. With the Strider reworked for Episode 2, Valve felt that what they had learned in that endeavor could have been used in Episode 3 for new enemies.
The Strider has big parts of him that rip off. He spews goo everywhere. He's a great testbed for new modeling technology and our new particle system. We custom built him just for this sequence. With our episodic process, a lot of new technology comes online throughout development. Since any new technology takes a year or more to really work out all the bugs, we like to look for isolated areas, like this one, where we can test out new things without risking all the things we know already work. We did this with HDR in our Lost Coast demos. Once we're sure we didn't break anything, we can move the features back into general use. Since the Strider worked out really well here, he'll be the new Strider as we move forward, and we'll be applying what we've learned to any new monsters in Episode 3.
Likely this is what led to a new type of enemy also being tested, a gelatinous blob that would absorb anything biological and capture inorganic objects.
The blobs, so we had the ISO surfaces that we ended up using in Portal for the paint. So we had that as an enemy. It was a blob enemy, and it could change its shape, and you could choreograph its shapes with some content tools. And then it could also split into little hoppy blobs that could, they were almost like little head crabby things, but they were little splats that would hop around. And we were doing all kinds of stuff with that. It could pass through grates.
You know, you could get more gameplay out of something where you had maybe a couple of creatures with simpler behaviors.
Oh yeah.
And then you would spend time like combining them with other game mechanics.
As part of the update to the Source 1 SDK, you can find files that describe new enemies. The first of these is the Armored Combine. This would have been a new type of Combine soldier, with additional heavier armor pieces. These pieces were likely able to be broken off of their body as they took damage. It had its own dedicated model. The second is the Weapon Scanner. As described, it's a scanner with a gun. It would have used the City Scanner's model, with said gun firing the crossbow's bolts, doing energy damage to the player if hit by it. Buried in the files for Portal 2 are several scene files for a character that doesn't appear in that game, Dr. Magnuson. While Episode 2 scene files for Magnuson have the prefix of mag_, each of these new scenes are Magnus_. Even Episode 2's cutscene files have the mag_ prefix, such as this one, called Mag Get Going. Given this difference in prefix, and the various technical and gameplay connections Portal 2 has to Episode 3, this suggests that these scenes weren't cut Episode 2 content left in Portal 2's files, but likely cut content from Episode 3 test maps brought in to help develop the game. There are 5 scenes in total. None of them have any captions or dialogue linked with them. They are Magnus Get Going, Magnus Idle, Magnus No Point, Magnus Shake Head, and Magnus Wave. While Magnus Get Going is similar in name to an unused scene in Episode 2 named Mag Get Going, the difference in prefix in Portal 2's connections to Episode 3 through the paint suggests that these scenes weren't cut Episode 2 content left in Portal 2's files, but likely cut content from an Episode 3 test map. Through the concept art that we have, we can get a rough idea of Episode 3's story. As previously stated and hinted at in Episode 2, Episode 3 would have been set in the Arctic regions around the Borealis. As we see in Dr. Mossman's message, the Borealis would have been physically stuck in the ice and snow. The earliest pieces of concept art for Episode 3 were done in 2005, the year after Half-Life 2's release, and during the development of Episode 1. With more and more being done during the development of Episode 2. The Combine would have already been there, would have set up extensive infrastructure all over the place, all in an effort to help claim the Borealis for themselves.
Even into Episode 3, I still don't know what that would have been if we'd built it, because it hadn't been built. That was the feeling of excitement of something I can't even imagine is going to happen with as a team. I was not like imposing like a top-down, this is what we must do to tell our very important tale. You know, it's like, oh, we have new features? Like, how do we use, what kind of story can we do with these now? Story was never the boss of anything. It was always the, you know, we worked on a peer-to-peer thing. We were all gonna, what can we do? What do you think would be cool?
For transit through the region, the Combine would have made use of a giant new rail system. These trains were massive, being larger than any human boats. One would have ended up derailed and crashing into the ocean. Whether this would be from player action is unknown. Some art shows an impossibly standing, singular, tall structure out in the ice floes. The design looks Combine in nature. There would have been other older human structures in the region, of varying age and build quality. The beginning of this Arctic journey would have seen Gordon and Alex crash land their helicopter, the one from the White Forest hangar. During their time in the Arctic, they would have encountered advisors and hunters. They would have soon discovered that the Borealis wasn't the only ship in the Arctic. In fact, the Combine were deliberately breaking up other human ships, including massive Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. Gordon and Alex wouldn't have been alone, though. In one concepted idea, the player would have met with resistance forces at a submarine. The closest thing we have seen that combines this narrative and the new gameplay is a tech demo map set in the hallway that Judith's message is set in, with both Gordon and Alex fighting a blob creature. The 6 months of dedicated production for Episode 3 would spill over into early 2008, where the project was dropped in order to assist Left 4 Dead 1's launch. The team would then go on to produce its sequel, and then Portal 2.
I think we were 6 months in on it when we moved to Left 4 Dead. I don't know, we were moving at a pretty brisk pace too. Left 4 Dead needed kind of an all-hands-on sort of an effort to ship. And so we put down EP3 to go help Left 4 Dead, and it was a really tight shipping schedule, and it required a lot of work from everybody to get out the door. And it was worth it. I mean, it was,
Left 4 Dead came out.
Left 4 Dead came out great.
Valve would not end up finishing these Half-Life projects. The original Episode 3 project was not finished in part due to a desire for a new Source engine, one that updated or moved away from the bit-space partition system of Source 1. Though this wasn't the only reason Episode 3 wasn't finished.
I thought that we needed to go much bigger on Episode 3 or do something else, because I don't know if this is the right way to describe it, but element fatigue. I think we had really explored a lot of what made sense in the Half-Life universe and setting.
Arcane was building the Ravenholm game, and even they were having trouble doing cool new stuff with this tool set. And like, if those guys can't figure out a bunch of cool stuff to do with this, I think we're running out of fuel.
Episode 3 is coming along. It's like, well, what's the new big thing here? It's got to be bigger than all the stuff we just did. Even Episode 2, and it's like, oh my god, it just becomes.
Are we allowed to cry in this documentary? That's what I want to know.
This is the tragic and almost comical thing about it, was it took long enough that then by the time we considered going back to Episode 3, the argument was made like, well, we missed it. It's too late now, and we really need to make a new engine and to continue the Half-Life series and all that. And now that just seems, in hindsight, so wrong.
Yeah.
We could have definitely gone back and spent 2 years to make Episode 3.
But yeah, I mean, some of those people made Left 4 Dead 2 and then Portal 2. So,
yeah, we did other things instead.
It's not like that choice would have been free.
Right.
In terms of the players, like they may have gotten that and
given up something
else. Yeah. So it's hard to say.
In the end, after having numerous Episode 3 devs and using numerous technical and gameplay components from Episode 3 itself, Portal 2 would go on to feature a Borealis Easter egg during the Old Aperture segment. Even as they started developing Source 2 properly, they felt they needed the engine to be further along in its stability and feature set before it could be accomplished. Half-Life Alyx would later launch on a far more stable Source 2.